it's hard to grow a business. Anything that kind of sucks when you get double the size, doubly sucks. The math scales, and so you really have to root out those annoyances while you're tiny. And I would say if you're a 5-person company, act like you're a 50-person company, not in a bureaucratic way, but in a building something so that when you do grow, it's not painful.
But he said something that I really loved, and his name's Jake Dunlap. And he said, I like to fire myself for like 3 or 4 hours and do demos on different types of products or different types of things. And it could be AI, it could be anything, but he fires himself for a while just to try different things and see. He's like, listen, I stumble on nuggets sometimes, and other times, I don't. But I thought it was a really cool approach to looking at different avenues in tech and different avenues in programs and different avenues that can really help leverage the business to be more efficient.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.
Welcome back to Unfinished Business. As you know, it's the show where we dive into the untold stories and challenges of innovative entrepreneurs and leaders throughout this country. So I'm your host, Dave Sliman, and we are going to into the insights today about the IT world. Now, it's probably not the most sexiest of conversations as we get along to it, but when you have an organization and shit hits the fan and you need to really get into your data or find your data in some respects or onboard people and really do those sort of things, it's an important one. So I'm bringing in today the founder of Mann Consulting. His name is Harold Mann, and he's going to talk about his stories, his approach, and his ideas regarding IT solutions, problem solving, cloud backup, everything that comes along with it. So Harold, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, man. And this guy has no sense of humor either. So I'm going to tell you that right now. Just be prepared. All right, listen, Harold, you've been doing this since 1991. Like I said, you probably started when you were 15. How has the role of IT support evolved over the years? I know it's a pretty broad question, but especially for small businesses, because I know you focus a lot on that.
Sure. Yeah, it's great to join you today. The role of IT has changed probably more than 100%, if that's mathematically possible.
Okay.
Back in the day, people didn't know why they needed email, why they needed to be on the internet. And then you fast forward to today where someone will call us upset because the recipient hasn't gotten the email within 30 seconds of them sending it. Expectations have gone really through the roof in terms of what people expect in terms of ubiquitous internet connection. People lose their minds over not having usable Wi-Fi on a transatlantic flight, which is sort of mind-boggling. No, it's changed a lot, and yet certain principles haven't changed. The importance of being careful with your data, the importance of privacy, the importance of security, the importance of redundancy. That we, if you leave your device somewhere and you can't work, you're doing it wrong. That's a good rule of thumb. It used to be that all your stuff was on that laptop, but now everything is, in the cloud if you do it right. And so computing's gotten a lot easier. And if people just follow the way the professionals do it, I think they can really enjoy computing rather than be so frustrated by it, because we see frustrated people every day.
Every day. Yeah. What is probably one of the most common tech related challenges that you see businesses struggling with today? And I mean, how do you help solve it?
Yeah. So if you are prone to vigorously floss right before your dental appointment the next morning, then that's sort of similar to the way people handle their computing, which is they only involve their computing support person after stuff has hit the fan. And so the thing we see the most often is people either winging it or thinking they could manage without. And then suddenly they come to us in a panic when things aren't working well. So just like, if you ask a dentist, what's the secret to your industry? They say the secret to our industry is we make more money when people don't listen to us. And the exact same thing with IT. We'll make more money if you don't listen to our advice. So I understand the frustration that dentists and doctors and others feel because their customers think they somehow can cheat the system or game the system. Listen to your IT person. They want you to be successful, and they will make more money if you try and save more money.
Just well said. I mean, well said. What's probably though for you? What is probably the most overlooked aspect of tech these days in an organization?
So it's a very broad question, but what I would say
Yeah.
is, the old, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse rather than building a car. So most people are still using the old paradigms with new technology. So if you're
Ah,
emailing a file back and forth for a presentation, you're doing it wrong. If you are, sending somebody a bunch of information in a very archaic way or in a very cumbersome way, you're doing it wrong. Even redlining, which is an old, legal
yeah.
process that so many people do with contracts, that whole process can and should be much more iterative and collaborative rather than this back and forth and back and forth. So, what I say the most common mistake people make is they don't really take advantage of the new technology in a way that's going to transform their business. They simply do it to make these little small improvements along the way. Best way to do it is to ask an IT person, how do you guys do it? Or how should we be doing this? What most people instead do is they say to their IT person, fix my printer,
Right,
fix my
right.
email. But we can actually help you re-architect your business to make it run much, much better.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about some of you don't have to name names, okay? But what's probably one of the craziest stories you've run across in either trying to recover data or security that you could share? I'm really interested because you've been doing this a while and you could probably share some pretty cool, pretty crazy ones. But you have one
Yeah,
that sticks?
yeah. One comes to mind because it was so slightly dramatic. It was also hard. It was hard to understand in the moment. So I don't know if you
Okay.
remember. There's a scene in Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger where
I do remember the movie.
the person has to decide which person to shoot, and they both look identical. And
Okay.
you can't tell like if the guy is the real one or the fake one. Anyway, we had a client, a venture capital customer many years ago, and they were they called us and said, "Hey, we're going to be letting our partner go.
Okay.
At whatever 2 p.m. Turn off their accounts," and that's normal. And then later that afternoon, the person we were going to be letting go called and said, "Hey, uh, I need all my data because we're going to be separating the business, and so I need you to give me all my data." Anyway, the gist of the story is we got two totally separate messages, and it's sort of like, who do you trust? Who do you believe in that moment?
Right.
And we did
Right.
not want to be the ones who had to make that decision. And so, I sort of said, look, you two gotta decide together because we don't want to guess wrong and then get sued, right? So that was
Right.
an unusual one, which is, how do you know which person is actually authorized to tell you what to do? That can be awkward. Sometimes we'll find out, we'll say, look, the company will say, we're letting the president of the company go. Well, are they really letting them go, or is it just a mutiny? Those kinds of things can
Right.
be a little bit tricky. IT people, you might think they crave power. They just don't want to guess wrong and get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you end up doing in that situation? Did they end up working it
We
out and coming
Yeah,
back to you?
we refused to act until they could give us a singular directive that they could agree
Mm,
on, and I stand by that decision. Had another one. Two founders were fighting. One of them was on the phone with us. While I'm on the phone with them, someone from a court came into our office with an injunction barring us from talking with them. These people were like total scorched earth thing.
wow.
Yeah, don't. The lesson is, if you're going to get a founder, a co-founder, or a partner, put everything in writing. Get it all very clearly written down. That's the best advice I can give over 3 decades.
Yeah. Now you work with, I mean, everything from small businesses all the way to obviously to larger businesses as well. Talk to me about how important having a sound onboarding and offboarding process, since we're talking about this, for any business listeners out there right now who may be just kind of winging it. I'm sure you've seen that. There's not really a sound process. I'd like you to speak to the importance of that, because I've lived that world too.
Yeah, onboarding and offboarding is a fascinating aspect of businesses because it always starts rather organically and informally, and then as businesses grow, they learn
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of steps. And the older your business is, or the more mature your business is, the longer those checklists should be. Ours is probably 80 to 100 steps for an onboarding and probably
Wow.
50 or so on an offboarding. Because if you think about it, there's many discrete steps that you have to think about every time
Yeah.
someone joins. And if you're just doing it based on memory, then it's going to only be as good as the person who is doing it, their memory. So a key measurement is to pull your newest employee aside and
Mm-hmm.
ask them how to do 10 or 15 different things, or ask them how to use 10 or 15 different services in your organization. See how they do. If they're fumbling for it, your answer is easy. Your
Yeah.
onboarding procedure is not mature enough. So if you do it right, the onboarding process should actually be weeks, not hours or days, and it should require practice. And part of it is orientation, part of it is training. Another key metric that we use is training at its base level is a design flaw. If you have to train, when you first join your company, no one trains you on how to use the restroom, right? Because everybody knows how to use the restroom because it's a universal design.
Right.
And it would be awkward if they had to train you how to use the restroom, right? So every training that your company does with you, if you think about it, is all the stuff that's not intuitive, that's not set up, that's not easy for them to do. So your onboarding, you want to design it such that the most recent hire is the best person to train the next person. Of course, that's not the case, right? The most recent
Right.
hire is the person who learns it the worst because onboarding and offboarding are not well honed. All you have to do with the new person is encourage them to say one simple phrase: there was no way for me to know that. And if you can encourage them to say that in your business to their manager, then you will unearth all these interesting things that they didn't think about. And all they have to say is, there was no way for me to know that. Right now, they're not going to do that because they're nervous and they want to make a good impression. They want to pretend like they were listening. But the fact is, there is no way for new people to know all the stuff they need to know.
Yeah.
So you just need to get it so that they can't fail as easily. And that will form your onboarding checklist. Your newest hire should be writing your onboarding checklist, not your HR person, not your director of people. Your newest hire knows all the problems. They can make it better so that the next hire doesn't have to suffer.
I think that's a great point. So, for all you business owners listening out there, if you haven't done this or have a sound onboarding and offboarding, now listen, your newest hire, you can't offboard, but let's talk about the onboarding. Yeah, I think that's a step, a really great, easy step. Your newest hire, go through the onboarding checklist, see how they do, run through it. And if there's, flaws in that process, then ultimately what you want to do is start improving. I think that's a great benchmark and a way to gauge how well. Now let's talk about offboarding. All right. Because I mean, that
Yeah,
has to be,
offboarding's
it's a little
tricky.
different. Yeah. I mean, right. But
So
what would say
offboarding,
the first thing you need to do as an organization to have smoother offboarding?
yeah. So offboarding, you're talking about really corporate folklore or knowledge transfer. So
Yes.
there's obviously the stuff that's in all the accounts, but then there's also information that needs to somehow be uh, sort of passed down from person to the new person or the manager. So offboarding, obviously, there's a whole bunch of just security issues and autoresponders and all the basics. But if you think about it, um, you want to figure out, what do we do with all the data? Should a new person have access to all those emails? Is that worth moving all those emails to
Right.
someone else to be able to go through? Some organizations obviously have to do a legal hold in case they're worried about litigation in either direction.
Yeah, it can
Sometimes
be
there's
messy.
intellectual property thoughts. So I would build your offboarding around a worst case scenario, right? Pretend like they have some critical piece of information that you might need in 90 days, and they're not going to be answering your calls. Another piece would be if you are worried about someone leaving, there are things you can do as an organization before the offboarding to reduce the risk. Okay, it's very delicate when someone is leaving because you
Yes.
don't always know what they do or don't know, and you don't always know what you know or don't know. And depending on how you end things with them, that can be very awkward down the road. So I would say for offboarding, have a well defined plan for how data will be transferred
Hmm.
and then be able to sort of go through all your information to find traces of that person's interaction. And ideally, the information should speak for itself. So if there's a bunch of stuff you have to just ask someone, then your process has probably not been built well for transitions
Yeah.
or turnover.
Yeah. Know where all the stops are, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so listen, let's flip a little bit on your organization, right? I mean, you've built a team of certified experts, diverse backgrounds. I mean, obviously, knowing different types of programs. How have you built your culture and evolved throughout the years? What have been some of the mainstays that you've kind of hung your hat on to be successful? You've been doing this for a while, and I commend you. I mean, you said the first 30 years were tough, and then
Yeah, I like to joke the first 30 years were tough, but the last three have been easy. No, look, uh, I quickly got in touch with my inner lazy person, and I realized I didn't want to have to keep saying the same things over and over again to people when there were new people in certain roles. And so I tried to always think of things from a system standpoint. You know, how can we build a system so you don't have to ask somebody, how do we do this or how is this done?
yeah.
So I've always been amazed at the consistency of certain brands. Like you go anywhere in the world, no matter how old the kid is that's making your burger, your McDonald's hamburger is going to taste identical. So that kind
Yes.
of rigorous process engineering was something that I was attracted to because what it did is it created brand consistency. And when you have brand consistency, you have a lot more room to work, and people will trust you at the outset if your brand has that. So we tried to build things such that our customers could have a consistent brand experience, even for something as mundane as IT support. Because if it is something where if your brand is something where someone else says, "Oh, yeah, it depends on who you get." If you get David, he's going to be good, but if you get Mark, yeah, he's not good.
Yeah.
Then it's very hard for people to know how to trust the brand. And so, any good brand, if you build it from the ground up with systems in place and with consistency in place, then you have a better chance of giving your customer a good experience. And in turn, they will come in assuming better things about your team, that they are knowledgeable, that they're going to help you out. And the only flip side to that is you have to meticulously make sure your customers are having an excellent experience. Part of what makes that whole Undercover Boss show so entertaining is it reveals the disconnect
Yes.
between what companies are thinking they're doing and what they're actually doing. And so it's just like for your employees, right? Same thing as for your customers. If you are delivering on something at a company level, top down, then there should be no insights, no light bulb moments. But in fact, what these CEOs find out on those shows is like, oh my God, I had no idea this job was so hard, or I had no idea they weren't supporting you. I mean, it's interesting. They've turned that into like a almost a romantic thing. Oh, look, this we're so screwed up. Here's a new car and here's a scholarship for your kid. But really,
So true.
by the time your employees are complaining about that, you've failed them. So that's a
Yeah.
long-winded answer, but I would say I really wanted to make sure we were able to deliver a consistent brand experience for our customers, and before that, a consistent employment experience for our employees. And we didn't do it well for years. I mean, we lost a lot of people as we were learning it all.
Yeah.
But over time, we learned, oh, yeah, make it easy for your team to be successful, and then they will be able to do better work for customers.
Yeah. Try to limit the casualties for sure, because sometimes you lose some good people along the way in those processes. And that's just the natural world of business. I mean, and I looked it up. I mean, you guys have been named like the top 100 fastest growing companies in the Bay Area, like 3 times or 4 times. So, I
Yeah,
mean, you're doing something
we've
right.
had a lot of we went through some chaotic growth. We meet. we meet companies while they are growing, right? That's when most people
Right.
feel like they need IT help. So we had to adapt and work with them at the speed that they were growing, and that in turn caused us to have to learn how to grow ourselves. It's hard to grow a business.
Yes, it is.
Anything that kind of sucks when you get double the size, doubly sucks. The math scales, and so you really have to root out those annoyances while you're tiny. And I would say if you're a 5-person company, act like you're a 50-person company, not in a
Smart.
bureaucratic way, but in a building something so that when you do grow, it's not painful.
That's great. Clip that back because that was a great comment, because I'll have our team clip that back. And I think that's a great way to look at it. Whether if you're 50, you want to act like you're 500, right? I'm sure that's the analogy, but realistically, I think that's a great perspective and a great way to look at it. Now, especially in your world, listen, the tech world moves pretty damn fast. How do you guys stay ahead of the curve in terms of training and certification? I mean, it's got to be a bit
Yeah,
challenging.
it is interesting. I envy, industries that keep getting to use the same penicillin that they've been using for 80 years, or the same fluoride, that they've been using for the last whatever many years. I think in our industry we are continually driving the car as it's being built. I
Yes.
think the key thing is just being a watch guard for your customer to make sure that you are helping them adopt the technology carefully, and that you are pointing out the risks that they might incur, because a lot of people just go for the shiny objects. A
Mhm.
lot of times an IT firm will be the company that actually has to strip away all the marketing hype and actually tell you, yeah, actually that feature isn't that usable yet. So it's having a very sober perspective on the technology. But what we do is we just stay ahead of the curve, and we have to just look at what's out there, continually evaluating it. We are pretty conservative about not just jumping on things because they look cool. We need to make sure they are actually
Yeah.
going to make your business run better. But I would say the biggest mistake people make is they don't just ask their IT person, how should we be doing this? Because we don't have the same problems everybody else does. And once I told some of my frustrated clients that, they said, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And then it got easier once they
Easier
simply
to answer.
listened.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way to do it. You know, one what are some of the things that small business or just businesses in general on the tech side should be trending towards now that they'll probably have to trend towards in a year or 2 or 3 years for that matter? Are you seeing anything out there right now?
Yeah. So obviously, everything's got the word AI on it.
Yes, of
I
course.
would say that it is really a good idea to start trying those things out and figuring out what is working well for you and what isn't working well, uh, and adopting it, even though it's not quite ready for prime time, because it will be. And so I would say one of the best things your business can do right now is, again, talk with people who live in these future technologies and say, how should we be doing this? And then build your business around that. So if you have a department where different people are all contributing to a presentation all on their own, everybody should be able to see that document as it's being built,
Okay,
and
good.
and not just opening up the same file on the server. I'm talking about literally collaborating together and all getting the same information. The other thing I would say is make sure you don't have islands of data in your organization. So
Okay.
if someone gets married and changes their last name, how many places do you need to change that? Probably a lot. That would mean you have these islands of data rather than data in a central way. Now, it's a big undertaking for people to
Yes, it
centralize
is.
that, but that's the difference between a company that has its act together and a company that's just going to grow slowly because they didn't adopt a more integrated approach to their information. It's not something everybody can do on their own. They need help. But once you do that and you think of things at a central level, like, okay, they just changed their name from Smith to Stern, then if you change it in one spot and it just ripples through, then your organization can grow faster, because that means there's only one place to have to change that information. That approach requires a lot of technical architecture, but it pays off handsomely as you grow.
That's a great point. A great point. And we had a CEO on who's has a sales consulting firm, but he said something that I really loved, and his name's Jake Dunlap, and he said, I like to fire myself for like 3 or 4 hours and do demos on different types of products or different types of things. And it could be AI, it could be anything, but he fires himself for a while just to try different things and see. He's like, listen, I stumble on nuggets sometimes. And other times, I don't. But I thought it was a really cool approach to looking at different avenues in tech and different avenues in programs and different avenues that can really help leverage the business to be more efficient. And listen, if you don't have the time to do it as a CEO, then have somebody do it, maybe even within your team or someone you can consult with. I think it's a good way to take an approach at it for sure.
Yeah, Amazon is an amazing company. They obviously have, millions and millions of dollars of investment that they're constantly pouring into their product. And if you work
Yeah,
with them and if you do business with them, they make it easy to do business with them. That's not relegated to just the big companies who have that money. Your business can also make it easy for people to do business with you. You just
yeah,
have to unlock that by asking your customers, what can we do to make this easier for you? And they'll tell you. Then it's up to you to decide how much of that you're going to implement.
that's a really good point. Another great strategy. Listen, I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about the S word, which is security. Okay. It's an important one, especially nowadays with hackers and all kinds of stuff. I mean, I've seen some nightmares with companies coming in or hackers coming in and holding companies hostage and telling them they have to pay ungodly amounts of money in order to release their data or they're going to shut their data down. Talk to me about, I'm going to make this real simple. What are a few simple steps that every business can take, whether small, medium, or large? Larger ones obviously should have their act together at this point, but small to medium sized businesses that they can take today to improve their security or their cybersecurity?
There's a lot of fatigue around this, right? People are reading
Yeah,
about it. So the fatigue is actually the biggest danger, right? The complacency that builds up once people just roll their eyes. There are a lot of small business people that say, look, if Caesars in Vegas can have ransomware, how can I possibly protect
yeah,
myself if I have a fraction of that kind of budget? Here's what you can do. You need a culture of skepticism. Your company needs to be soaking in skepticism and vigilance. And the old, if you see something, say something. If I get an email from you or a voicemail from you with your voice and you're pissed and it's Saturday and you call me and go, you need to get this done right away. You have to stop and go, is that really David that's calling me?
yeah,
Is that really
yeah,
now? Unfortunately, for years, I'm talking about many years, we were able to lean back and just go, "Oh yeah, you spelled my name wrong, or the English is terrible, or the logo is wrong. These little grammatical errors." That's all going away. Okay, the deep fakes are going to be so accurate;
spot
they're going to
on.
be in your voice. Elderly generations, they're screwed, right? Because they're going to get calls from you and me saying, "Hi, mom, I need your social security number to figure out this form." And she's just going to give it because it's in your voice. So you have to
Yeah,
practice a culture of skepticism. Some organizations will only do things in real life. The IRL is going to be the term everybody's going to use again because the only thing they're going to trust is when you can actually look at the person across the way. Um, so, from a security standpoint, skepticism, vigilance, constant phishing of your employees because the bad guys are going to be phishing them. So you should fish them now and see who gets caught. Your IT firm can put all of this in and run all the tests and send all the tutorials for the people who fall victim to it. And then just continually train people on the ways in which things can be faked. The audio is going to be terrifying. Videos just around the corner. It's going to be weird. It's unfortunate because we're going to have to teach the younger generation that you can't trust anything that you see or read anymore. But um,
it's pretty damn crazy, man. I mean, there was this one company I got a demo from. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the name of it. But at any rate, it was AI voice of just handling a customer service call. And it was amazing on how it was so clear and answered, even joked around. I mean, it was unbelievable to me, uh, the accuracy. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit! I mean, people are going to be getting calls for donations and money and this and that. My mother-in-law, who's 87 years old, the only reason she picked it up, some guy, and I don't think it was AI, but some guy called her and said, "For hey, grandma, I need money," and the only reason she didn't give it to him is because nobody calls her grandma in the family. They all call her Mimi. So she's like, nobody calls me grandma. And she hung up.
So
So
that's the other thing. You want a glossary, both internally as well as in your family and personal life, a
yeah,
glossary of only you would know this kind of information. And then
yeah,
you want to do some false positives. You can say, remember that time when I broke my finger, and like you never broke your finger, and that can be tipping them off. So those kinds of things, just to see if the person on the other end is in fact who they say they are. Go back and watch Total Recall. When you see that bead of sweat going down the guy's face,
yeah.
only
They blow
then
him away.
only then would you know, yeah, he was the bad guy,
Yeah, he was the
some of
real
the
guy.
we won't be able to distinguish, and
Yeah,
that's gonna be tiresome, and so it just means we gotta do a lot more, authentication. People will wanna circumvent these security things with, you know, end arounds. The speed bumps are necessary. It is important that you do this. It's gonna annoy you. It will slow down your business. If you don't do it, your business is at risk of existential risk because of the threat of ransomware and just cybersecurity breaches.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, again, any advice of the things that they could just do right now, very simply, just
Yeah, talk to your IT person, ask them what should we be doing? And if they don't have a
okay,
good answer, get another IT person because you should probably be doing things differently than you are. A lot of people are still using their computers like glorified adding machines and typewriters. They're
yeah,
not thinking about things more systemically. They're not thinking about things from a location independent standpoint. And run your business as though your employees are all over the world because frankly, with the way nomadic information workers are going these days, they might be all over the world, even if you're a small business. So COVID was a
yes.
real opportunity that created this for people, and it turns out people can work from a lot of different places. It does come with its pitfalls and its trade-offs, but I would say build your business so that your people can be anywhere. They will be less likely to leave if they can work from Paris for a couple of weeks if that's where they want to visit.
Let me tell you, in this realm right now, you don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive in this deal. And again, I'm no cybersecurity expert or IT expert. We had definitely built up an IT side of our business that took time, and you don't have to bite. You don't have to, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Take it all in one chunk. You can do it in processes too, right? I mean, that's the other thing is people feel like they got to overhaul everything. And there are ways to, now there are times where you have to overhaul things, but there are also times where you can take it in steps, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go, high risk items first and then add in things. You're not going to have the budget or the time to do everything all at once, but you can absolutely make these improvements incrementally in your business. A lot of people, the old adage of working on your business, not in your business. You got to work on your business from a security standpoint and a growth standpoint. And if you need help with that, talk with people who do that for a living because they can give you some really good advice.
Call this guy right here who's on the screen if you don't know where to go. Check him out. Listen, I knew this was going to be, again, a very interesting yet educational conversation. What's one story in particular that you found either the most challenging or most rewarding, in an experience like this? Maybe something that stands out to you.
The things that it's been so important for me for this business to be more than just me. At a certain
Yeah,
point, I realized when I was young and just working really late every night, the things that give me the most joy in the business are
yeah,
remarkably boring and dull and almost uneventful. It's where something just works because we took the time to make it easy. Um,
yeah,
that in a way, there's an expression which is, hard work, easy life, easy work, hard life. We put a lot of hard work into making certain things just easier to do in our business. And by doing that, then every time those kinds of things come up, we don't have to sweat them or deal with them. Nothing comes to mind right now because they're
Yeah.
so tiny,
Tiny
but
deals.
those little innovations you make, and they all came from people just sort of saying what I said earlier, which is there was nowhere for me to know that. So listening to the complaints of your employees, you get this incredible opportunity to build things that make it so they don't need to complain. And
Right.
so I think that for me has been the most rewarding thing, which is just where the newest person that we hire is successful. The person who's been with us 10 years, they're going to be successful because they learned how to be over a long period of time. But the person that's been with us for only a few weeks or months, when they're successful, that means we've really built something that can grow and last. And that's very rewarding to me.
That's a great answer, actually. Fantastic answer. You don't want those kind of stories. You want everything to be kind of just status quo, ahead of the curve. Listen, last question here. Well, actually, one more after that. But looking ahead, what's next for Mann Consulting? Are there any like big plans on the horizon? Innovations? Anything's coming down the pipe for you?
My first job out of school, I worked for a gentleman named Jay Shyatt, and he had an expression which is, "We wanted to see how big we can get before we get bad." And that stuck with me for literally decades. I just want to continue to have our business grow and get better at what we do, refine, improve, and listen. And when you do that, then you get what they call lucky, which is actually just a lot of preparation meeting opportunities. So
Opportunity.
we just
Oh,
want to
yeah, all the
continue to
time.
just engineer that opportunity for luck. I've always been admired Krispy Kreme, for example. Apparently, they're known for
Yeah,
being able to get very inexpensive locations because the product is so sought after. People will go to a Krispy Kreme even if it's not near them. So I'd like to do the same thing with our brand, which is just have it be so good that we don't have to hire a sales force of people to sell it. That the brand and our existing customers will sell it for us. That may be maybe not a particularly architected growth model, but it's been working for us for the last 3 decades, and I think we've outlasted a lot of businesses in the meantime.
yeah, because you don't have salespeople or commission, do you, for your firm? I mean,
We don't. I'd rather have a happy customer refer to us, and frankly, it's the same way I bought my car. I didn't want to have to haggle or just. I just the car was the car I wanted, and therefore they had pricing
that's it.
control. And if you
Yeah.
have a good enough brand, you have pricing control.
That's great. That's great. Listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed this interview, Harold. Where
Me
so
too.
if I'm a small business, if I'm a small, medium, or large business, doesn't matter. But I need some answers. I have some questions regarding my IT, security, everything top to bottom we talked about today. Where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, mann.com, mann.com.
Yeah.
And we have a hello page. You're welcome to book some time and talk with us. We're happy to chat and see if we can be of help. mann.com. And I love linking in with people on LinkedIn too.
What year did you reserve man.com? Because that's probably pretty darn popular.
It was a while ago. It was in the early 90s. And I get offered a lot of money for it all the time.
I believe you do, my friend. I believe you do. Listen, I want to thank you for being here today. This has been a great interview. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Everybody out there, as always, do us a favor. Like this show, share the show, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, any of these shows, just share them with one person. That's it. We've had some great support, great feedback. We've had great growth, and it's all because of you out there. And as I always say, it's all because of our guests. So, Harold, thank you for being here. This has been a great show. Wealth, health, success to all of you out there, and we will see you next time.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.